Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News, and we had some technical difficulties at first, so we're starting back again. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in today. Today, we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Apparently, her team and the Biden's team, they're having issues, and I guess that kind of happens when you accuse the person you're running with of, I don't know, trying to segregate you as a young girl, but they're having some trouble. But amazingly enough, CNN is reporting on it. People have, and the right wing sphere has been talking about it, calling it a little shade war. But again, CNN wrote about it, so it's getting some traction, and they're trying to do some damage control, like some passive aggressive damage control, which is pretty funny. And I think they hate her, and they're probably trying to humiliate her. So it's a little funny, just a little funny. We're also going to be talking about the Rittenhouse case as well. Been some interesting developments as far as that goes. Hopefully, this will end in spectacular defeat for the state. And I hope this kid sues everyone for every penny that they have in the media. I hope they sue Joe Biden. There's been some. The mother has hinted that they might sue some people, and Joe Biden and other people should be sued just tremendously for what they've done to this kid. I do have a super cut. I do have a super cut of people calling him a white supremacist that I'm going to show. But they threw out the weapons charge, which I thought shouldn't have been included in the first place. And then when they were given instruction for the weapons charge, basically the judge came to the conclusion that you guys have to argue that this kid was under 16 or was under 17 and had a gun that was longer than 16 inches or shorter than 16 inches. Obviously, they couldn't do that. So at that point on Friday, when they said that, I'm like, why don't they just throw it out? So they did throw it out. So it's gone. Weapons charge. People can't say he crossed state lines to go into a community with the gun, which he didn't do. And he carried an illegal firearm, which didn't happen. So I'm glad that there's been some good news on this front for this kid. We will see if it lasts. We're also going to be talking about the CDC. Someone did a FOIA request for some information for the CDC, and the CDC isn't collecting certain information, and they have learned to not apparently ask questions that they don't want the answer for. So they're acting more like lawyers and scientists, I guess. So we'll be talking about that as well. So make sure that you guys are going to blacktnews.com, checking out different content that I have on the website, that you guys are sharing articles, and that you guys are liking pages. Thank you to everyone who's recently liking my page. Got a new boast of some followers, so thank you. Please check out the merchandise I have on the website. The goat hoodie is very comfortable. It is getting cold out there. I do have it in different colors. If you're someone who likes to spill stuff on themselves, well, not like to, but maybe you just do it. So got this denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of some of the racist stuff that he had on the back. Isn't it crazy that he called someone the Great Negro, and the media is trying to pretend that it didn't happen, and they're like, well, it's missing context. First of all, I don't actually think it's not the thing that you want to say, I guess, but is that ample evidence of Joe Biden being a white supremacist? No, there's other like ample evidence of him saying racist stuff and using a phrase, because he's old as dirt. Joe Biden saying someone is a great Negro of a certain time isn't really a big deal unless you apply the same kind of rules and standards that they would apply to Trump. Because I am old enough to remember when people were mad at Trump because he pointed to someone in the audience. He's like, there's my African American. He's like, there. And my issue was that it was just seemed a little too uncool for Trump. But media was really upset about that. But they're trying to pretend that the great Negro comment didn't exist. And fact checkers are saying it didn't happen, while literally quoting the quote of him saying the great Negro in it. But anyway, there's some more substantial things on the back of this shirt. Like the you ain't black if you don't vote for me. and some other things on there. So if you want to get that and educate and trigger people, you can get that. I am not the victim you're looking for. I got some cool be better not bitter stuff. And also got stuff with black tea and you are not that special mugs and so on. So please check out the store blacktnews.com. If you would like to support Black Tea News, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate and make sure you're following me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. All my handles are at Black Tea News with the exception of Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea. So before we jump into it, I do want to point out I always like to start with something humorous, and I found a tweet from Tom Cotton retweeting Joe Biden saying, "I'm not going to shut down the country. I'm going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm going to shut down the virus." And he said this should be flagged for misinformation. So Tom Cotton has some good stings here and there, and that one is definitely, I think it's time that definitely could be flagged for misinformation, because he did not keep his promise here. Remember back when Joe Biden said all we need is 100 days of masking? 100 days of masking. But people should have believed his first quote on the debate stage when he's like, "We're going into a dark winter." And I'm like, people still voted for this? The dark winter. So now I think we are going into a dark winter, but our big issue is inflation. People are about to spend more money on Thanksgiving, if they even have money to spend it on, buying turkeys and stuff that are more pricier than they basically ever been. And at first they tried to pretend inflation wasn't an issue. Now they're just like, well, it's just a good sign of the economy. Like they're doing all kinds of spin from the time that all this started. And it's not really hard to believe that we're having all of these issues with supply chains and so on. Because I remember way, way, way early in the time of the pandemic that there was someone wrote an article saying that, hey, these lockdowns are going to lead to like global starvation and other things like that. And I'm like, oh, it kind of seems like lockdowns are a bad idea. I've pretty much maintained that I thought locking down wasn't the good thing to do, and I know that's a controversial opinion. I think it's less controversial now than all the time that I have said it. And I understand people doing it initially, but 15 days to slow the spread, it became very apparent very quickly, after day 15. That was a lie. Or not a lie, but not going to be reality, at least. So it is what it is. But I got to show you this crazy story from Saginaw, which is in this I live in the state of Michigan. So not too far from me, there were some teachers who couldn't go to work because they all came down with the COVID. So here it goes.
COVID-19 pandemic weighing heavy on some mid-Michigan school districts. Some districts have had to close entirely because of outbreaks of the virus, while others only partially.
As our Mark Bouillon shows us today, it was something other than COVID-19 that forced one Saginaw County school district to close their doors today.
Saginaw Township Community Schools closed for today. At first, you might be thinking COVID-19 is to blame. But a district spokesperson tells me a large number of staff members had negative reactions to the COVID-19 booster they received over the weekend. Now, according to the CDC, some of the most common side effects of the Pfizer and Moderna COVID booster are pain at the injection site, fatigue, muscle pain, headache, and fever, also the chills and nausea. For the J&J booster, the CDC says fever, fatigue, and headache were some of the more common symptoms. Recent data from the CDC shows among 12,500 people who received a third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, 79% reported those local reactions like pain and itching at the injection site, while 74% reported the systemic reactions like muscle pain and fatigue. Now, going back to the district, they also say what complicates the situation even more is the substitute teacher shortage, which is why the district had to completely shut down. You may remember just last week, Swan Valley schools had to close also because of a staffing shortage. In Saginaw County, Mark Bouillon, ABC 12 News.
Yeah, that's crazy. Can you just imagine, we would not be able to get give flu shots away if we are doing if it caused like all these issues and adverse reactions, and they're not even reporting all the stuff that happens with people after they take the shot. So again, I just want to supply information because I feel like the mainstream media is not keeping any sort of balanced opinion. If you feel like you need to take it, I think you need to go ahead and take it, given your history, your age, consult your doctor, but don't be pressured. That's a problem. That's what people talk about. It's not because everyone is on the planet is an anti-vaxxer. People don't like how people are being forced into it. If you did not hear, the courts did stop Joe Biden and OSHA's mandate. So I have a relative that their job was like, we're going to institute this. And so they sent a letter to their job, was like, I'm not going to give you my medical information, because they were saying that not everybody had to wear masks, just people who weren't vaccinated. And so they said, if it's one thing if you want everyone to wear a mask, but if you're going to purposely discriminate against people, I don't think that's right. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to disclose my medical information to you. It was not a condition of my employment. And so they sent like an update to their company. It was like, hey, just FYI, at least I advised them to just send a little FYI. Maybe you guys should do this too. Just let your company know, hey, the courts deemed that this is unconstitutional. They said it wasn't common sense because it doesn't accommodate any sort of common sense measure, like about like one natural immunity, which brings me to this FOIA request that someone did with the CDC. Now, someone did a Freedom of Information Act with the CDC, and they wanted the data because they wanted to see how many people who have had COVID and have a natural immunity from it have reinfected other people. And the CDC said something pretty amazing. They released a letter. And it says that we can't give you that information. And they can't give you that information because they don't collect those sort of things. Let me get rid of my logo so you can see a little bit. So, if they convey that this information is not collected. So, if they're not collecting information to know whether people who've had COVID are reinfecting other people, don't you guys think that's important information to know? Because it's one thing if you catch COVID and you're like, oh cool, I'm good, right? I'm not gonna get sick like I was before. I've lived through the worst of it. But they're still telling us that there's reason to be concerned because you don't want to get someone else sick, right? That's why they want to make everyone else feel like they're crap and grandma killers, because you could be hurting someone else. So this really seems like information that would be absolutely important for the CDC to be looking at, and data that they want to collect. The only reason to not collect something like this is because you don't want the answer, because you do not want to know if people who are naturally immune after they have COVID and they've recovered and they have the antibodies and so on, you don't want to know if they're not spreading it. And if it's really a comparison to the people who are vaccinated, to see that it's the vaccinated people who are the super spreaders. So this isn't, we've come to a place where people don't really respect or care about science. I mean, the science is still out there, but when money and government control starts touching things, you cannot just assume that it is a pure entity that just cares about taking care of the people. You have to, because people are still associated with it, and power corrupts, especially when you talk about government and we talk about bureaucracies and so on. Money can definitely corrupt. The love of money, not necessarily money, but the love of money, the Bible says, is a root to all evil. And I'm not trying to preach a sermon to you, but it's just common sense. It's just common sense. So a lot of things like about the mandates don't make sense, about especially with employers. Like it gives no consideration whether you've had natural immunity or you don't have natural immunity, for one. And we don't know if it's going to be permanent at all. We don't, and you're putting something in your body, so all these things are permanent to you. They're not taking any sort of accountability. There's no liability. It's just you're responsible for whatever decision you ultimately make, and they're forcing you into it. The company's not going to just be like, oh yeah, sure, you can sue us if you get sick. And you can't sue the vaccine companies. You have to go to the government and see if you can get a couple dollars or something, but they're not going to pay you as much as they pay those illegal aliens that they separate. So take it at your own, you know, risk. You consult your doctor, but just I don't want people to feel like they're forced into it. And in America, we really need to stand up to these tyrannical measures. They said 15 days to slow the spread. They said flatten the curve. They said all these things, and months and months and months went by. They undermined the vaccine effectiveness because they didn't want people to have hope when Trump was in office. And then when it was clear that he was not going to win any of the contested stuff that he contested for the election, Pfizer's like, oh, we got a vaccine. So they've played politics with this a lot, and Biden's been using it a lot to accumulate power. I mean, they used it to win the election. As soon as they were like, we got to shut down the country, 15 days to slow the spread. That was basically the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency, and they did all the stuff with the mail-in ballots. So, it's obviously they used it more than just about that, but they've accomplished a lot, and I think they've done a lot of harm. It could have been worse. But they've done a lot of harm this whole entire time. And they'll keep pushing it because they want to keep accumulating more power. And if we don't all stand up and say, this is insane, this is America, and we are entitled to our rights and our freedoms and our liberty, and you've done enough, and we're not going to take anymore. If we can't all come together, they're going to keep pushing us as far as they can go. And we also need to tell our neighbors to back off too, who have gone psychotic. I saw a TikTok that I'm going to reply to. So there was a young woman who said that she loves seeing anti-vaxxers, which people just don't like the COVID vaccine. It's not all vaccines, but she loves seeing them complain about how they can't participate in society. She loves that they can't go to basketball games. She loves that they can't go to school. She loves that they're getting kicked off their jobs and so on. Which is pretty incredible, pretty insane. So, but just really confirms to me that the issue is really people at this point want to break your legs and make you comply because they complied. They feel like, oh, you think you're too good to do the same thing that I did? So, because they're not being driven by data, they're not being driven by science. They're just sick little tyrants that have been empowered by the government, and they want to force you to comply the way that they complied themselves. So it's pretty remarkable. But it's caused a bunch of different other issues, including inflation. And now they're just like, oh, well, we could, what else could we have done? Well, you could have acted differently during this whole, governing phase. There is a crazy commentary today, basically that inflation is your fault and you should have been saving money during the pandemic when you're getting COVID checks.
And Stephanie joins me now live. Steph, it's great to see you. As you say, inflation's over 6%, numbers we haven't seen in more than 30 years. So how much higher can these prices go, and when do you see them coming down?
Well, listen, Willie, nobody knows exactly when they're going down, but you have to put all this in perspective. This inflation is not in isolation, and the government predicted it was going to be a challenging recovery, all tied to COVID. So it's why you see things like that expanded child tax credit. You've got the families of over 60 million kids on average getting $430 a month. For people on fixed incomes, older people on Social Security, they're getting those fixed payments adjusted next year up 5.9% for inflation. And the dirty little secret here, Willie, while nobody likes to pay more, on average, we have the money to do so. Household savings hit a record high over the pandemic. We didn't really have anywhere to go out and spend. And as we said a moment ago, we're expecting retail sales this holiday season to break records. For those who own their homes, the value of our homes are up. And while the stock market isn't the economy, you got over half of American households with some investment in the markets, and the markets have hit record highs. So we need to put all of this in perspective. This time last year, when you and I were talking, Willie, nobody had a vaccine. Now 200 million Americans do, and we're seeing this push of demand, and that's pushing up pricing.
So that's a pretty interesting spin. First of all, there's parents who have opted out of the child payments because they They want that their taxes back at the end of the year, so they don't want that upfront money there to get used to that, and then I don't potentially get put in a situation where you may have to pay it back. So I know people who have decided to opt out of that and aren't getting those payments. And by the way, not everyone has kids. Not everyone has kids. So just like, well, the families are getting 400 and something dollars. So everyone else should just be able to eat it, suck it up and just take it. That is a really interesting perspective. Yeah, there's people who have money in their savings because they didn't spend. There's people who use their COVID money to get by, that they needed it for their rent, they needed it for their mortgage, they needed it for their car payments because they lost their jobs or they got laid off or whatever. That unemployment, though the unemployment was paying people quite a bit of money. And it depends what career you had. If the unemployment was paying you more to go out and work, like if you worked in real estate, there are people in real estate who couldn't go out and do their showings and stuff, and what they made in unemployment was significantly less than what they would have made if they went out and were selling houses. Now there are some people who just decided to have fines and go out and sell stuff because it was still worth it to them. And they said during that time people were making some if they decided to just skirt the restrictions and just go ahead and risk it and pay the fines and so on. But not everybody was obviously willing to do that. And there, if you use your COVID stuff for bills, which a lot of people did, and then people did go out and spend their money, at the local mall, stores like Nike, Champs, Converse, people had like Black Friday type days, like all the time, because people were spending their money on stuff that they did not need. And now to say, well, you should have had it in savings, or people have it in savings. Not everybody put it in savings. Some people spent it because they could. Some people spend it because they needed it. So saying, well, you should have it. I know prices are high, but you should be able to afford it because you have the savings. People don't want to use their savings for inflation. People don't want to use their savings because milk is too high, because gas is too high, because bacon is too high. That's not what they want to spend their savings on. People want to spend their savings on, hey, I've been saving up all these years to take my kids to Disney World. They want to use their savings on, hey, I want to buy this house, or they want to use their savings on emergencies, on medical emergencies for the family. People who use their money, they spend it wisely. They don't want to just have to spend it on everyday expenses because the supply chain is broken and prices are up and you can't meet demand and so on. That's not what people want to use their savings on. So I'm sorry that the elitist people who they hire at I think it was MSNBC to sort of shift the narrative, that is one heck of a spin. It's one heck of a spin. So I don't know what to say, guys. They really want you to not feel bad about this inflation, and but other people are acknowledging that this is now going to be the thing that people care about more than COVID. People are more scared about the prices they see at the grocery store than they are about COVID. And people are kind of, I don't know, used to the fear of COVID. Like, I don't think people are really that scared to go out places, but they're still like conditioned to wear their mask and so on. You have these average kind of fear lurkers, I suppose, but people are more concerned about these prices, and it's not going to be good for Democrats. It wasn't good in Virginia. The economy was on people's minds when they went out and voted for Youngkin, and it's going to be something that continues on. Education is going to be something that continues on, especially as they keep pushing radical things. But the economy is going to be number one thing on people's minds, and if they can't figure out a way to fix these problems, it's going to be bad. Jennifer Granholm, who is the energy secretary, she's the former governor of Michigan. And man, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I said, our energy secretary, when she was the governor of Michigan, she like the decade, like the time she was governor, we call it the lost decade. And oh gosh, their face was so funny. They were just so horrified. Like, why would you hire someone like that? But she already said, and I talked about this last week, that our prices are going to go way up in the winter too. And they're trying to blame OPEC and so on, but we know Biden, they're trying to undercut America's energy independence that we pretty much gained. And they're shutting down pipelines. They don't want people to drill on federal land, and it's no secret. Biden said he was going to do it, by like proudly, like during the campaign, and then the media would come up and be like, well, he didn't say that, or he didn't mean it that way. He only means it. I'm like, no, the man said what he said, and the man made it a priority as soon as he was president to start shutting that kind of stuff down. So now we're dealing with all these energy prices and inflation and people who did not like Trump. If you look in, like, my sister, one of my sisters goes on like the Shade Room, which is like I think it's a page on Instagram, right? I don't think there's like an actual website, or maybe there is, but there's a page on Instagram called the Shade Room, and it's like urban focused sort of posts and stuff. And she reads the comments. There's a lot of people who are like, man, I wish I had Trump back, or man, I shouldn't have voted for Biden, or man, I'm mad that y'all made me vote for Biden. So this is going to be a continuous issue for Democrats, especially as they keep trying to push Build Back Better, and they're trying to say, well, we need childcare because those are the things that are expensive. Milk is expensive, dude. Build Back Better. How's that gonna make milk cheaper? And you're just adding more debt for us and more debt for our kids. So they run into a big problem. But the Biden administration, they just don't have their act together. Kamala Harris. So CNN put out an article talking about how her team isn't happy because they're not properly utilizing her. That they're putting in front of different problems, and they're not really making sure that she's prepared to handle questions and other stuff like that. Like they're setting her up to fail, and perhaps they are. I mean, if I was Biden and Jill Biden, which maybe not Biden, because I don't know how good his memory is anyway, but Jill Biden, you can probably remember back to that debate stage when she was like, that little girl was me, and it basically accused Joe Biden of being a segregationist who kept her from trying to keep her from going to school with white people. So if you recall things like that, which Kamala laughed it off like it was a debate, but like secretly you could like internalize this sort of hatred, I guess. So there's been rumors of them not liking each other, like the Biden's team and Kamala's team. It's been known as a little shade war between them. But I think it's interesting that CNN has come out and done an article saying that Kamala isn't being properly utilized. And so Jen Psaki tweeted this out. For anyone who needs to hear it, VP is not only a vital partner to POTUS, but a bold leader who has taken on key, important challenges facing the country, from voting rights to addressing root causes of migration to expanding broadband. So I saw someone retweet this and said, oh, I know at least one person who needed to hear it, which I guess would be Kamala. And then I saw someone else tweet this, a Black woman tweeted this and was like, can you imagine being like the first VP female of color and a white woman? Like you're a heartbeat away from the presidency, and the press secretary, the white press secretary, tweets out such a little kind of condescending kind of thing. And so people are saying the fact that Jen even tweeted that out sort of gives credence to the whole theory that there's some not confusion, but tension between the teams. First of all, what she said, like, voting rights, like what? So they trot her out to say Republicans are bad, Republicans are racist because Black people can't get IDs. Like, is that really what we're going with? Like, there is no major problem. More people voted in the last election than any other election. People are voting more, not less. And we introduced new ways to vote, in the last election, last presidential election. So saying, hey, maybe we need regulations on drop boxes and stuff. So maybe we need to make sure that people aren't harvesting ballots, because that's been an issue on the right and the left. So there's protections you want to have, sure, yeah, but making sure that people can show IDs and having Kamala going like, this is racist, these people are jokers. So no, that's not a serious thing that they're having her do, and that's just like mouthpiece spokesperson work. Migration. So Kamala Harris has butchered the border situation. The whole interview when she's like, we've been to the border. And like, Lester Holt said, you haven't been to the border. She's like, and I haven't been in Europe either. She's just really awful at her job. And it was Biden and his team decided to take some really dumb measures, and they put her face in front of it. And I don't know if that, well, I guess they thought she was a good sacrificial lamb for it, because obviously she wasn't going to handle it well because they didn't have good policies attached to it. So they plastered her face on it to try to shift the blame toward her, I guess, than rather maybe keeping it keenly focused on Biden. And that's a playbook, I think, out of Obama's book, really. Because if you remember Benghazi, which who can forget, that's basically what they did with Hillary Clinton. Like, I'm not saying Hillary Clinton didn't deserve, the attention and the distress that she got. But to me, if you look back on that, and people who talk about it, they talk about her, and maybe that's just because she ran also in 2016, and so it was a big topic of conversation. But people were more focused on her than remembering who she was lying for, who she was covering for. She was covering for her boss. Obama was her boss. So all attention was basically shifted to her. And people who don't like Obama's policies, they'll still say, hey, I like him, but they'll demonize her. And it's like, but why are you shifting the focus when all roads lead back to him? So they did that with Obama did it, and now I think the Biden administration has taken like the same page, which a lot of those people from the Obama administration are back there at the White House, like Jen Psaki. So the focus, instead of Biden being with the border and bad stuff with the border, which obviously they're still doing bad stuff with the border, but Kamala Harris being the face of that and marrying her face to that crisis, pretty crazy. If you contrast that with Trump, who gave Mike Pence a good task, one that he was well suited for, because he was qualified, I guess. Mike Pence had the qualifications. I mean, being a governor, running a state, he could have ran for president. I don't know if he's thinking about it, but he obviously could have done the job. And so Trump was like, hey, you're going to coordinate with these other governors as far as the COVID crisis, and you're going to be the face, and you're going to be the person they speak to, and you're going to do all these things. And so before COVID got extraordinarily political, you would have these Democrat governors admitting that they were doing a good job. You had Newsom and even Cuomo, where the media would ask questions. They'd be like, guys, I know you want us to rag on them. We want to rag on them too, but we can't, because they actually take our phone calls, and they've given us everything that we need, and they're actually doing a good job, and they're keeping us up to speed, and they're giving us good info. So we can't really rag on Pence, like they're doing a good job. So Trump put Pence with a task, and he actually managed it, did well. Kamala Harris is a face, and they have her just going around doing PR, and not even good PR. Do you remember, did you guys see that video when she was talking about the space program, and she was doing an interview with some kids, and she's like, we're gonna see through a telescope with her own eyes, and it was really awkward. But it turned out those kids were actors. They didn't even find like real children to have like legitimate conversations. And why is that? Do you think the children were going to ask the questions would be too challenging from like just like average Joe kind of children who don't have to like go through a Canadian casting company? So they shelter her a lot. But she is unprepared, and Biden is unprepared, which Biden being unprepared for this job is crazy, because he was vice president. He's been in politics for a very long time. I mean, so he's been there so long. He said that Afghanistan wouldn't be like the fall of Saigon. He was there during the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. That's how long Biden's been around. But my opinion, my theory on why Kamala Harris is a VP and Joe Biden is even the president right now is because they selected these two because they don't see a big future with either one of them, and they were worth sacrificing. And I mean, Kamala Harris didn't have any traction when she ran for president. She was going to get embarrassed in her own home state primary, so she dropped out. Tulsi Gabbard just ate her lunch, just demolished her bit by bit. And I think they were probably a bit surprised that they were able to pull it off with but they moved heaven and earth to get Trump out of office. So I think they could have probably selected someone else to run. It didn't have to be those two. But I strongly feel like they thought, and I wrote an article about this, I think they thought that if we lose and if Trump is inevitable, Joe Biden is old as dirt anyway. This is his last opportunity to run, and Kamala Harris, she's kind of awful, and she will be the woman on the ticket, and she will be the colored face on the ticket, and that's we can check off our intersectionality, but do we if she loses, oh well, we don't want her to be the main face anyway. So it's amazing if that is correct, and that's why they did what they did, because now Biden is president, he's doing a not good job, and Kamala Harris is still a heartbeat away. This person that they obviously don't seem to like is a heartbeat away from it all. And I think that's troubling. But whatever kind of animosity they have going off, Jen Psaki tweeting out, "Oh, Kamala Harris is a vital partner." This is not how you assure that there's nothing going wrong, in my opinion. This is just how you fuel more rumors, and I think just pretty much confirms the article that CNN wrote, and I think the fact that CNN of all places contributed in his writing that they're having issues really gives credence to that. Lastly today, I want to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So the judge dismissed the gun charge, which people cannot say he crossed state lines illegally, which it's a 30-minute drive. Where he lives to Kenosha is a 30-minute drive. And there was one time he's on the stand and he's called Kenosha's community, and the prosecutor's like, "What do you mean your community? You don't live here?" And he's like, "My dad lives in Kenosha." So he had they really tried to make it seem like this kid was just a vigilante hunt, crossing state lines to hunt people down. There are some people who actually believe his victims are black. And people keep trying to compare. They put headlines with Kyle's case, with Aubrey case, because they want it to be racial, and it's not racial. And to a degree, I get why the media is doing it, but they need to be held accountable to some degree. So I hope they are red pilling some people who saw the coverage and actually watched the trial, and they're like, this is not what I heard was going on at all. But I think the only way that these companies learn is if someone sues the pants off of them. And they got humiliated with Nick Sandmann, and I hope Kyle Rittenhouse ends up getting off and he can be exonerated, and he can just sue everybody for what they're worth. Here's a little supercut of people calling white supremacists.
Kenosha shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse, he murdered 2 people, by the way.
Rittenhouse is basically what you would have had in a school shooter. He's a 17-year-old kid. He shouldn't have had a gun. He crossed state lines to supposedly protect property. No, he was going out to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the armed teenage vigilante.
A 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a guy who's deeply racist, went with weapons to a Black Lives Matter protest looking to get in trouble. He did. He murdered a couple of people.
Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old kid, just running around, shooting and killing protesters.
You see the 17-year-old who was radicalized by Trumpism, took his AR-15 to Kenosha and became a killer.
A white, Trump-supporting, MAGA-loving, Blue Lives Matter social media partisan, 17 years old, picks up a gun, drives from one state to another with the intent to shoot people.
A 17-year-old boy who drove across state lines with an AR-15 and started shooting people up, including a guy with a skateboard.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who has killed protesters, unarmed protesters.
Rittenhouse is a 17-year-old that went with a weapon into the middle of protests and then provoked people and then shot and killed them.
Kyle Rittenhouse is the enemy.
A boy from out of state drives up to the state with an AR-15 around his neck, shoots and kills a couple of people, shooting wildly, running around, acting like rent-a-cop.
Drove across state lines armed with a rifle to go and shoot people.
What a dark, dystopian scene where a 17-year-old boy is carrying around a rifle, running around and gunning down protesters.
Yeah, so these people are crazy. I guess the person in the video who makes me most upset is Joe Scarborough from Morning Joe, and of course that is also MSNBC, and they say the craziest stuff on that network. But he was supposed to be like a Republican like 5 minutes ago. What did Trump do to break these people? Like, I know he upset his girl, because he is porking that his co-host. I don't know if they got married yet. I don't follow him like that, but it's just crazy that they would lie like that. I mean, it's not like information wasn't known, that there hasn't been video for all this time. So FYI, yes, he did cross state lines. But if I decide to go down to, I've never been like stopped in going to Ohio and someone like, did you cross state lines? like that's some kind of crime. Like, it's some kind of crime to do that. So again, he does live in Illinois, but for where he lives to like Kenosha is 30 minutes. His dad lives in Kenosha. He has friends that live in Kenosha. He worked in Kenosha. He worked that night before, I think, and then he stayed over a friend's house, and they went downtown. They cleaned up graffiti from a school. And then the event of the day went on. He did protect that property. It wasn't his property, wasn't his business, but at one point, some of the people tried to lie on the stand and say that Kyle didn't have permission to be there. But according to Kyle, they did have, and they actually drove them and gave them the keys. So he was there to protect the property. There's ample evidence that he was, before the shooting and stuff happened, and like during like altercations that people had with like police and pepper sprays and bullets and stuff, he was like, oh, I'm helping people, medic, do you need help, so there's plenty of evidence that he had goodwill on his mind. So people acting like he's an active shooter, which he didn't go out just hunting people. Everyone who he shot were people who were attacking him in some kind of way when his life was obviously threatened. If you objectively look at the facts, and the facts have always been true from the get-go, so the media saying all those crazy things is just absolutely unforgivable. And I hope they sue them out of existence. That he gets way more money than Nick Sandman and stuff got. The mother kind of hinted that they might be. I didn't have the clip in there with Joe Biden calling him a white supremacist, but Joe Biden accused him of being part of a militia group. And in Joe Biden's a video that he had, his campaign video, he talked about white supremacy, and he had a clip of Kyle Rittenhouse. So essentially, they just really don't. They're upset because all America isn't ready to just let themselves be overtaken in a Chaz zone and have some kind of random rapper be the warlord over America. We're not at that point. But Don Lemon, he said it's an ultimate entitlement for someone to feel they have to protect their property, whether that's their street, their community, or even their country. So it's amazing that they're like full-blown communism now. But I think this case is really important, because if Kyle Rittenhouse can't prove his case of self-defense with all the video, with these people attacking them, even when the only one who survived admitting that Kyle didn't even shoot him until he pointed his gun, the gun that he wasn't supposed to be carrying, because he had his concealed carry was like expired or terminated because of some crimes or something. So he had a concealed weapon, and he wasn't supposed to even have that, so he was in the wrong. And he didn't live in Kenosha, by the way. I think he's from Milwaukee, so he traveled to get there to that. What are the odds that everyone Kyle shot had some kind of record? One of the first guy, Mr. Rosenbaum, being a serial child molester who was apparently crazy. What are the odds that all of them had some kind of issues, had some kind of criminal background? What are the odds? Because does that happen when you just randomly are go on a shooting spree? Does that randomly happen, or does it tell us a little bit about the people who were out there causing trouble that night? The people that they're trying to protect, the people who the media is like, oh, they deserve justice, and everyone does deserve justice, but Kyle deserves justice too. And to convict him when he has a clear case of self-defense, I don't care how you feel about it, I don't care if you think he made bad judgment, he clearly was protecting himself. So this case is really bigger, even on the self-defense front, even the people going around saying that, hey, you shouldn't feel entitled to protect your property. Property is still a thing. We're not a communist country. We can protect our stuff, dude. Don Lemons, the jokes at CNN who are pushing that kind of stuff, and everywhere else, you guys are crazy. But the Second Amendment is also basically on trial too, because the mere fact that he had a weapon that he was legally allowed to carry is like what the prosecution is going for.
Convince you that Joseph Rosenbaum was going to take that gun and use it on the defendant, because they know you can't claim self-defense against an unarmed man like this. You lose the right to self-defense when you're the one who brought the gun, when you're the one creating the danger, when you're the one provoking other people. The defendant fired 4 shots at Joseph Rosenbaum and caused 5 wounds total. The first shot.
So the fact that he had a gun, the fact that he was armed, they're saying he provoked them. People are saying, oh, he shouldn't have brought the gun. Why, if you were going to go, let's get over the fact that you think he shouldn't have been there. If you're going to go and going to be there, because EMS won't go and try to help people and stuff when the zone isn't cleared. And that's, Kyle said that on camera. He's like, I'm here, EMS won't come, but I'll help people. I got some training as a lifeguard, and I volunteer firefighter stuff. And like, he's done all this kind of like good Samaritan sort of training, and like I said, there's ample evidence that he didn't go there to cause trouble. Like, that wasn't on his mind. And he wasn't just on a building sniping people from a distance. Everyone he shot were deranged people who were chasing him. He was chased. Clearly self-defense. But the mere fact that he has a gun, why wouldn't you be armed in a situation like that? So if you have a gun, you are provoking people merely because you have a gun. That is crazy. That is insane. And you lose your right to self-defense if you provoke people, if you have the gun, if you have something to protect yourself, you lose your right to self-defense. That is the case the prosecution is making. So I know that the jurors, they have reason to be concerned. They are concerned. The governor decided to launch the National Guard. Maybe they could see the writing on the wall. This case could have gotten thrown out. Maybe the judge feels confident that the jury will do the right thing. I think the judge could still technically do the directed verdict, even if they rule a certain way. But the judge was like, the prosecution's done so many kind of wacky things that even if Kyle is convicted, that they can easily get a mistrial. They did malicious prosecution. They admitted evidence that was pretty much doctored. That they decided, was that maybe Thursday? They decided to go all in a photo that was really blurry to say, hey, Kyle was pointing his gun at somebody, and that wasn't the case. But they tried to, and the judge even admitted that he probably shouldn't have allowed that. And if it comes out that was doctored, then that's, you're gonna get mistrial really fast. But I hope that the jury does the right thing, because their instructions are that the state has the burden of proving that this wasn't self-defense. That is the state's burden. And some people are excusing the prosecution and saying, hey, he's just going at Kyle. Like, it's a person's job to fight for their client as hard as possible. Their client, this is state versus him. They could have always had the option to not take the case. And as a matter of fact, it was reported that the actual DA knew it was a loser, and that's why they gave it to Binger. And people who know Binger know that he usually pushes things too far. So I guess it's just a style of things. He's just not being incredibly ridiculous and stupid, unprofessional. In this case, is just kind of the way that he is. But this is a case that they obviously wanted to prosecute. The mayor, the lead detective, a city lawyer, not the DA, but they're all related. The lead detective on the case is related to the mayor who failed to protect Kenosha. So I think they really just wanted to focus on him rather than focus on the fact that they failed. And they pushed his case forward. And by the way, that detective, they had a warrant for Gage Grosseritz. I did not say his last name correctly, but the person Kyle shot who survived, they had a warrant for his phone, and they decided not to execute it. And so the defense asked, like, is that a thing that you usually do, that you get warrants and you decide not to execute them? And they're like, no, that's not usually a thing. Oh, and the DA was the one who like advised them like not to do that either. So, and they probably didn't want to look at his phone because they didn't want to find some kind of text like, yeah, I wish I would have killed that kid. Some kind of incriminating thing that would prove that these people had ill intentions toward Kyle. That's probably why they didn't execute the warrant. Because his friend tweeted on social media that his only regret was that he didn't kill Kyle. That Gage didn't get away with killing him. So these are the kind of people that the media is defending, and they're upset about. And that they think that a 17-year-old kid, like, he's just 17, he shouldn't have been there. But you think this 17-year-old kid deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. He was too young to be there to try to help people. He was too young to defend himself. He was too young to carry the gun. And you think he's too young, but he's old enough to spend the rest of his life in prison for defending himself. You people aren't making any sense. Last thing I want to point out before I close, I posted 2 videos. I mentioned this in my other live that I did. I had to cut it off because the mic wasn't working, but I posted 2 videos. One was with a veteran talking about post-traumatic stress, and he was really upset at people who were saying that Kyle didn't actually have it. We're saying it was crocodile tears. And he's like, I've seen this before. He's like, not this case. He's like, but that face. He's like, that is absolutely post-traumatic stress, which the defense did confirm that Kyle is getting treated for. So I posted that video, and I posted another one that was just correcting some of the facts of the case. And so my sister was looking through notifications. She's like, it's so funny. There's people who would just, I guess, assume that I'm a white male because I did post 2 videos with 2, dudes. And so they were trying to talk trash about the guy posting it, but they don't realize that it's a black woman posting these things and having these opinions. And it's always funny when folks on the left are confused, but then they just decide to like internalize it and push it all out their mind and just be like, well, they're a white supremacist. I'm like, the black person is a white supremacist because I don't think the way that you allowed me to. Okay, we'll go with that. If you look at the facts of the case, Kyle should be in it. Kyle is innocent. And we should not get to the point where everything is a show trial, that the media can just lie without any repercussions the way that they've done. They've put people in such a crazy frenzy about this. There's people who don't know the facts of the case and don't care that they don't know the facts of the case. And that floors me because I wouldn't want to be embarrassed. I would want my facts together because I wouldn't want to be embarrassed. But we will see what they say. And like I said, the weapons charge has been thrown out. It's just a matter of really, did this kid act in self-defense? And I think that's obvious, and we'll see what the jury does. And if Kyle is exonerated, may they please sue the pants off of all those people in that supercut and so on, because they said some terrible things. And if Nick Sandman can get a big settlement for the way that they slandered him, my gosh, his mother should be rich and want for nothing. Thank you guys for watching today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have on the website. Please check out different merchandise that I have, like the goat hoodie. I already mentioned I got the Defeat Joe Biden, Denounce White Supremacy shirt with a list of his atrocities on the back. I also got other stuff like seasonal pumpkin spice season shirts with a little chibi Trump. They got those in mugs as well. And I also do have this My Money, My Business shirt, which Facebook didn't want me to run an ad on because they said I could change people's opinions about things. I'm like, that's kind of the point, Facebook, but whatever. It's still available for you, which I made because I got sick of people trying to say like abortion was nobody's business. And I'm like, you guys are trying to appeal the Hyde Amendment. Like, you think people should pay for it, but you don't think it's anyone else's business. So but a lot of things are our business because of our tax dollars. Oh, you know what? One thing I did want to show you guys, which is going to upset you. I'm sorry, I'm going to leave you with an upsetting thought. But Taliban's doing a someone were doing well, ISIS, everybody with our weapons and stuff was doing a parade with all the military equipment that we left behind. Yeah, so they're doing a little show of force, bragging about a bit. There's a old clip of Joe Biden that was circulating, talking about that why the reason why they can't just pull out, because it would take too much time, how things would collapse, and he's like, "We could do it faster if we leave the weapons behind. But if we leave the weapons behind, I can guarantee you, they'll be using that against your kids in the next war." So, um, he knew better. He just didn't care. I'm sorry to leave it on a low note, but if you guys enjoyed the show, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and consider supporting Black Tea News. And also, again, check out the store. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we had on the first stream, but I'm glad that you guys came back and are watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.